Studios, PFS Studio, GH3, Urban Strategies, MJMA, Court Architects, Perkins and Will, and 880 Cities. Now, before we move on into the agenda for today, I'd like to let everyone know that we will be taking a group photo towards the end of our session to commemorate all of our attendees for Leaders Lab this year. We kindly request everyone turn on their cameras when that time comes later today. Last time, we listened to our guest speakers, Kids Speak Canada, talk about effective public speaking skills. Christina Lee, a brand manager from Chipotle, shared marketing tools for your one-up chapters, and Isra from the organization Bite Size, who led a fun interactive session on design thinking. I'll begin today with an introduction to our speakers. We will hear from Project 5K on the benefits of youth volunteerism and Mustafa on his youth advocacy work. We will end Leaders Lab with a school chapter orientation, which will provide the ins and outs of setting up and running your own chapters at school. The goals for today include learning about volunteerism, social change, and advocacy work from our speakers. We will then pivot to our school chapter orientation with lots of great tips for organizing and leading your chapters. Now let's meet today's speakers. Starting with Maya Leckie, who is the president of Project 5K, an organization dedicated to connecting high school students to meaningful volunteering opportunities in their community. She initially joined Project 5K after finding that volunteering boosted her social skills, and she has been a member of Project 5K for over 2 years. She's a student at Thornley Secondary School and is eager to work with other bright youth leaders and develop an environment where youth can create opportunities for like-minded individuals. In her spare time, she loves to paint and walk her dog. Next, we'll hear from Mustafa, who is a recent University of Toronto graduate and political staffer. Throughout his undergraduate in political science, he volunteered actively in his community, including through becoming an expert practitioner of participatory budgeting, a revolutionary direct democracy system which gives citizens power over how their tax dollars are used in their communities. He's passionate about building better, more representative cities. So now we'll kick off with Maya's presentation, which will reaffirm the importance of youth volunteerism. Over to you, Maya.
All right, thank you so much, Lucy, for the introduction. Here, let me share my screen. Hopefully that was okay. All right, I'm guessing you all can see it. If a couple of you remember me from day one, I was also one of the hosts at Leaders Lab because I'm also a member of OneUp as well, so it's nice to see you all again. So we're all high school students here, right? So what I wanted to start off talking about today is sharing the story of when I first entered high school. So I'll admit that when I entered grade 9, I began with the mindset that I had plenty of time for volunteer work. After all, we only need 40 hours that are required to graduate. So I'm no mathematician, but that would only mean that I have to devote 10 hours a year to volunteering, which seemed like little enough to me, so I put it off a bit. On the complete other side of the scale, though, I had classmates that were constantly volunteering at any chance they could get. I would always think to myself, why? Why are they putting so much unnecessary work in? And my opinions stayed the same until I had my first volunteering experience. After watching those other students volunteer constantly, I decided to get a head start on my hours by volunteering at a children's summer camp in Richmond Hill. So before going into that camp, I wasn't particularly keen on working with kids. But after the experience, I sort of felt overcome with a sense of pride, and I felt very content. Making even that small contribution to my community made me feel purposeful, and interacting with the kids and the staff members at the camp on a consistent basis made me come out of my shell just a bit more. And as cheesy as it sounds, just by the simple act of giving away a few hours every single day, I became just a little bit more happier and a little bit more confident. So once I became hooked on this feeling, there wasn't really any going back. Over time, I began to realize the countless other advantages of volunteering early on in my high school career. It was around this time that I discovered Project 5K. So Project 5K is a nonprofit organization created by youth for youths. So the founders of Project 5K noticed that many youths want to volunteer, but they don't really know where to volunteer. At the same time, there are many events around the city that don't have enough volunteers. That's the reason why Project 5K started back in 2014. We aim to make volunteer opportunities more accessible for youths and to connect them to various enjoyable volunteer opportunities to make the community a much better place. So Project 5K hosts events such as Project Care Package, an event in which high school students can assemble and distribute care packages to the homeless population downtown. These events are youth-centered and youth-run to allow high school students to reap the benefits of volunteering. Now, you may be wondering what these benefits may be that I keep talking about. So let me share with you some of the benefits that I personally felt and experienced from volunteering. So although volunteering is generally considered this big selfless and humbling act, it can also be sort of selfish, but in the best way possible. Volunteering can give a sense of purpose and meaning to one's life, especially with youth, because while we're in high school, we're often confused about what path we want to take in the future. And that's sort of where volunteering really came in for me and gave me a little bit of guidance. Additionally, it can build self-image and confidence while being a way of exploring and discovering yourself in a more realistic setting than a classroom. I personally have learned a lot more about myself through getting involved in my community and leaving my comfort zone that way than I have in a school setting, especially with volunteering with Project 5K to run our own volunteer events. So if you remember Project Care Package that I mentioned before, that was actually the first event that I ever planned and executed with Project 5K, which taught me a lot about myself and my leadership style. Volunteering also teaches countless skills that will be beneficial long down the road. So it's very, very similar to the workplace, but without the added pressure. You can network, you can build people skills, learn to be adaptable, explore career options, and so much more. And the earlier you start, the more trained you become for when you're faced with real life, that difficult situations in which those skills are important. Without volunteering, I doubt that I would have things like the confidence or the public speaking skills to be doing presentations like this, nor would I have connections to those who invited me to speak today. So finally, the simplest and most important reason to volunteer is because it sort of gives you a sense of responsibility. Every person is part of a community that is not only built on obligation, but a sense of voluntary responsibility, which is where volunteerism steps in and sort of manages this responsibility and channels it into something productive. Now, one thing I personally have struggled with is sort of motivation once in a while. So as the school year gets busier, it's obviously understandable that volunteering doesn't really make it to the top of the priority list, but they're really, really easy ways that I've used to keep myself motivated to continue volunteering. The first one is to volunteer in an industry that aligns with your interests. This one is especially important for a lot of our older students, maybe going into grade 12 or near university, because it also helps you get a feel for whatever workforce or ultimate goal you have coming out of post-secondary. So though volunteering isn't all about you, it won't hurt to enjoy the work that you're doing. If it helps you get out of bed and help others, why not volunteer with something that you're interested in? If you do a bit of research, you're sure to find something that suits your personal interests and hobbies, because volunteering doesn't really have to be a chore. You can find something that interests you personally. If you're short on time, I also find it really beneficial to lend a hand at some one-day events. So things like marathons, festivals, and other charity events are really, really great ways to give back to your community and still make time to finish that history project, for example. It requires a very minimal time commitment, but it still gives you a big opportunity to help out and just volunteer for the sake of volunteering. And a little bonus point, a lot of those one-day events sometimes tend to give their volunteers snacks or food. So that's a bit of a bonus. And I know that Project 5K runs a lot of these one-day events that youth can help out at and that are sort of a lot lower commitment. So definitely check us out if you're interested. And you can also make these sort of one-day events a lot more fun by bringing friends or volunteering as a group, which brings me into my last point that really helps me with motivation, is using volunteering as a team building activity within your club, your organization, or even with coworkers or family members. So team building is a great way to strengthen the work that you do in other organizations or with other groups. So why not do some good for the community while you're at it? The larger your group, the bigger impact that you make. So make sure to get everyone excited and involved. And this tip is particularly very, very helpful for those of you who will be starting your One Up School chapters, because volunteering is a really, really great way to unite a team. It really challenges you to work together. Like, for example, I've volunteered with a couple of teams to go to soup kitchens or to plant trees, and just working together like that is, while it's very rewarding, and it's also a little bit challenging because it allows you to find out how your team works well together. So ultimately, no one expects you to prioritize volunteering over your schoolwork, your applications, or your part-time job, but keep these strategies in mind for the next time you maybe get a day off or a slow week. And remember that we all sort of have a responsibility to our community and to those in need. And I would like to end off by offering one last bit of encouragement to push yourself to go beyond the required 40 hours, because volunteering can really help shape you as an individual and bring a team closer together. So I hope you're able to harness that power of volunteerism for your personal and professional development, as well as for when you're setting up your One Up School chapter. And lastly, I just want to project some of Project 5K's social media. If you're ever interested in volunteering through one of our events, you can check out our Instagram or our website as well. So I guess thank you for listening, and I'll open up the floor to some questions if you have any. Thank you, Reed. All right. It is really, really rewarding at any point in your life. I completely agree. What has been my favorite volunteering event or activity? That's a tough one because I've done a lot of volunteering over the years. I think the most rewarding volunteering events for me personally have been ones that I've been able to use my leadership skills to help run and manage. So definitely the kinds of events that I'm able to take a leadership role in and run. Like, for example, I did talk about Project Care Package. That was the first event that I was ever able to run in a team on my own. So planning that out from start to finish, it was granted a lot of work. We had to take care of a lot of little tiny details to make sure the event ran smoothly. But once it was all done, it was kind of the greatest feeling ever. We managed to distribute over 100 care packages to the homeless population downtown. And we actually got to do it ourselves. We went around downtown and we handed these out on our own, and we got to see that tangible impact of what we've been working on for the past month to plan executed. And I think that was just a really amazing feeling, getting to see how what we're doing has that tangible impact. And even when I've done stuff like tree planting, I think whenever I do volunteer, I feel very connected to the work that I do because of you're able to see directly that impact that you have when you volunteer, which I think is so amazing. That was a great question. I'll wait if anyone else has some more. Oh, okay, I got one from Jennifer. What do you think are some physical or mental health benefits of volunteering? Well, I think I've experienced a lot of mental health benefits, because while you are active when you're volunteering and you're sort of getting up, it is also a little bit of a break from kind of stressors in your life, or at least it has been for me. It gives you sort of a reason to get up and do something, which I think is really, really important. It's the kind of thing that we need, especially when we're sort of trapped at home during the pandemic and you feel like you can't do very much. It gives you sort of a sense of purpose, even if it's a one-time event, even if it's momentary, it's still definitely really good for your mental health. And like I said before, seeing that tangible impact, you know for sure that what you're doing is beneficial, which I think has been one of the biggest mental health benefits of volunteering. And then as for physical benefits, I think most or all of the volunteering that I've done before the pandemic was very active. So it was a lot of working at soup kitchens or food banks or tree planting and handing out these care packages. So I found that it does really get you up, because obviously you have sort of committed to volunteering, and it is like a sort of excuse to get up and go and like obviously move. So I think that's been very helpful for me because I'm not the biggest fan of just like straight up going to the gym and working out. So it really does get me to move a bit more. All right. One from Angela. Do you have any tips on how to motivate other volunteer members that have started to drop off? That's a great question. It's something that I've had to deal with, especially with my work with Project 5K, because we do plan events like as a team for a group of youth. So I have had to work with people a lot. One thing that I definitely use to motivate other volunteer members is, well, the biggest thing for me is always seeing the results of what you're working towards. So it's very easy to feel like sort of hopeless and like what you're doing isn't making an impact, but I try to make it a point to show my other volunteer team members that like what we're doing is making an impact. And that's why I generally gravitate towards events that allow you to really see that impact a lot, like the ones I've described before. And also just keeping communication open, because as I said before, volunteering is really, really great for team building. It allows you to communicate with your team a lot more because obviously you're working together when you are volunteering. So it allows me to have some communication with the team and yeah, just sort of get everyone to bond a bit more. And when everyone's a lot closer together, it sort of allows like, it sort of prevents people from dropping off a bit more. All right, I think that's most of the questions that they have for me today. But if you ever have any other questions, you can definitely feel free to reach out to me through the Project 5K social media, or I'm also in touch with OneUp, so you can forward them any questions that you have as well.
Okay, thank you, Maya, for your really amazing presentation. Like personally, at least for me, it really opened my eyes to like a new insight of like volunteering and like also like how I can help other teammates who might be a little like not really into it. Anyways, now please let me welcome Mustafa from City Hall to talk to us about youth advocacy. His presentation will definitely inspire everyone to apply their passions in city building and give back to the community, especially through the school chapters.
Hi everyone. Can I share screen already? Perfect. Oh, that's the wrong button. Can you guys see it yet? It's still set. Oh, there it is. Everyone good? Can see it? Perfect. Well, thanks for having me, everyone. My name is Mustafa. First off, I want to start off by saying what a good job Maya's presentation was before me. I think it made a great point about the values and the importance of getting involved in your community and volunteering. And so it kind of covered some of the stuff that I thought maybe I should cover, but that I cut out for time. So I really appreciate that, Maya. And thank you everyone for attending and for inviting me. As Lucy said, I'm a City Hall staffer, political staffer, and Ryan asked me to be on to talk a little bit about getting involved in your community, and especially political wise. And then I added in a little stuff about, say you wanted to explore a career in political staffing, a little bit about how that could be done. So a little bit about me. I just recently graduated last year from U of T in undergrad in political science. I was doing that along with minors in urban and Canadian studies. Ryan and I met when Ryan actually worked with me at City Hall, and so we got to know each other then. I always had quite an interest in politics, in urban governance, city building, and the sort. So it was kind of it's now in hindsight seemed very obvious for me to go into politics. But actually, when I was in high school, I didn't even know that a career in political staffing was an option, and so it was kind of something that I kind of just discovered along the way by my interest in getting involved in my community. And so I think some of my important things to think about when you want to get involved in the community, especially politically, is to be focused with that involvement. To think about who you want to direct that engagement towards, what are the issues you want to go for, and then the how of, do you get involved in campaigns? Do you get involved with pushing for a single issue through maybe petitions of the sort? Or maybe it is, trying to get in touch with media about pushing for a certain issue that you believe in. And I think the very important thing about that is to remember to just be meaningful about that. I think a lot of people, sometimes they get involved with an issue because they feel like, it might be beneficial for their careers, or maybe they're jumping on it because their friends kind of told them to. I would just say, you want to always try to make it so that people believe that engagement is authentic. So yeah, I got a little bit of that. I'll go to the next one. There you go. There's a lot on this page, 100%. But I kind of wanted to do a little bit about how are different ways to advocate for change. I think that, as I know you guys are high school students, youth organizations are a great place to start, but it's also not the only way to kind of get involved with, City Hall or just politics as a whole in Toronto. There's pretty big organizations like the Toronto Youth Cabinet, which are a great place to advocate for change at City Hall itself. But are kind of a starting place, I think. I would also say, don't shy away from partisan politics. While a lot of people, I think, get a little bit uncomfortable with partisanship these days, it is maybe the most effective way to push for change if you have a certain issue that you believe in or a certain way of thinking, to kind of latch on to partisan identity and work within that. That might be, if you agree more with the Liberals or New Democrats, they have youth wings. Maybe if you're a conservative, they don't really have youth wings often, but they're very accepting of youth members even within their adult wings, which is even sometimes more effective way to push for change, because in that capacity, you're actually at the decision table more often. Yeah, I would also say one of the important things, I think, is that politics is who shows up. And so that means, being there in person so often. I also, I think there's quite a trend on kind of Instagram activism, I call it sometimes. I guess that's somewhat of a derogatory claim, but the problem with Instagram activism is that Instagram is a great place to reach people who are your age and who are under about 25, except that those are not most of the decision makers in the world. If you want to be pushing for change, that means being in the place where change makers are and decision makers are. And so that can mean showing up to in-person events, whether it's protests or rallies, but also being in the same digital space as those decision makers. And that is really Twitter. There's no comparable social media to Twitter to have your thoughts and opinions heard by politicians and journalists and the sort in Canada and across the world. I also, change.org petitions are not effective. I would say, right off the bat, no one has ever in politics really sweated over how many signatures a change.org petition has. Petitions are very effective, but when they are pen to paper petitions, the petition turns into a protest, turns into a rally, turns into a letter writing campaign to politicians. Those are the kind of things that that politicians really feel. They get 20 emails about something in a certain week. That really means something. But even 10,000 petitions on the change.org site, no one really thinks about too much. I'll be completely honest. So yeah, I wanted to do that. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about maybe if you wanted to have a career in politics. The first note is maybe reconsider it. And then after you're done reconsidering it, we could talk, because it's a great career, but it's a lot of work. I think it's one of the careers that you definitely have to put in maybe the most hours in. I think Ryan can attest to the workload that politics gives you. Right now, it's campaign season, as so many of you know, and it goes back to working all the time, talking to people, and it's some of the most rewarding work in the world, but it's also a lot of work. You could definitely get your steps in when you're working in politics. I would say, like, if a career in politics is something that you would like to explore, some of the most important attribute, I think, is loyalty. And so it's when we're talking about volunteering, especially in high school, so often, just like Maya said, you're often doing like those one-off events, like a marathon or a concert of the sort. Those are amazing events to really get out and engage with the community. But if you were to want to maybe transition into, having a better relationship with a politician, potentially maybe even moving into a job with them, showing that you are committed to them, committing to their vision of the future of your city, your province, your country, and that you can be trusted on to be reliable and hardworking. Those are indispensable kind of attributes in politics, and will get you very, very far if you decide that that's a job that you'd like to have. And then one of the kind of don'ts of politics is that so often I think people of all ages will show up on campaigns and the sort and say that there's so many things that they're not willing to do. Politics is, just like I said in the last slide, it's about who shows up, and who shows up is also who is willing to do every task, and on a political campaign, even the boss, who's the campaign manager, will often, you'll go in at 6 a.m. and they'll be cleaning the toilets, because that's how it is on campaigns. You gotta have to do everything, and that's one of the best things about it. Politics is, I think one of my favorite things about it is just the fact that you kind of gain skills in every single facet. There's really few other jobs, I think, where you get to dabble in so many things. But the most important thing in politics is always winning the next campaign. So that should be the focus if you ever want to get into politics, is focusing on how do I help this person win? And then we'll talk about the rest of it, whether it be me affecting policy, or my knowledge on a certain issue, or this or that. That's the next step afterwards. First step is always trying to win. So yeah, that's my quick presentation on getting involved. There's a photo of me with much less beard and much less quarantine belly, and some info that you can get in touch with me if you'd like. I'm happy to open the floor up to some questions if people would like, and I can stay on for a couple more minutes to do that. Are we doing audio questions too? Is that an option? I love audio questions if anyone has any of those.
Well, my question is kind of more high school related, but like I've heard of student council, and that's also something I'll probably need a campaign for next year. And I was just wondering from you, having so much like knowledge and experience in this, do you have any tips for like campaigning, but more like in a high school student council perspective?
Yeah, so I actually I do, because that's kind of where my first engagement was with politics locally was. So in high school, I was lucky to be the student council president of my school, and it's a kind of a different level than I'm working at now. But working with your local trustee is such a resource that I think some students kind of undervalue. That I remember being in high school, and I don't think any student could have told me who their student trustee was. Sorry, their like school board trustee was. And so, from your student council perspective, yeah, I think getting in touch with your trustee, talking to them about some of the things that your community, your school needs, even if there's issues with some of the policy of like who gets transferred into the schools and stuff like that. That's one of the things we got changed when I was in high school, is advocating to say, there clearly wasn't enough. The streaming between middle schools and high schools wasn't adequate, and so we talked to him about getting that policy change, and it did get changed because of that. We ended up with a solution that was much more advantageous to keep the school community healthy. And so those are things that you can talk about with a trustee. I would really recommend that. Aside from that, there's a lot of city property around a school. Those are things that you can engage with your city councilor about. And I don't think any politician dislikes hearing from students in their community, because it's some of everyone's most favorite work, to be dealing with students. So I'd really recommend that. All right, I got some written questions, but I'll come back for any audio ones. If anyone wants to raise their hand, then I'll pick on you to unmute. Ryan said, if our high school chapters want to advocate for change in their neighborhood, who should they go to, and where, and how should they go about it? Yeah, so I guess I kind of just touched on that. Emailing your local trustee or counselor is a great place to start on that. Especially if you kind of say you're speaking on behalf of some students. As we since we're still in COVID, I guess it's a little bit harder to have like in-person meetings with those politicians. But to be able to even organize like a Zoom meeting. Last week, I had a Zoom meeting with a couple students from our community who are trying to organize a back to school drive for less advantaged students in the neighborhood. And the first reaction was like, let's get together a Zoom meeting. Let's talk with the counselor and see how we can help, how we can maybe get some donations for people and stuff like that. That's a great way to do it. Meeting face to face, whether even if it's digitally, is a great way for the politicians in your area to kind of get a grasp of who you are and how they can be of assistance. Jennifer says, what are some ways to get involved and learn more about local government as someone who is not super interested in politics? Also, like your Twitter handle. Thanks, Jennifer. I appreciate that. Some ways to get involved without being interested. I think those are kind of counterintuitive. I think that if you're not interested in politics, then I don't know if involvement is really the thing that you need, right? I think if you want to learn and maybe you consider that, that politics could be something that you might be more interested in, I would say that some of the best places to learn is really your local paper. I think many of you live in Toronto. The Toronto Star has some really good like municipal coverage, and they talk about the big issues that are coming up at City Hall and the sort. I think some people might strive to say like, oh, here's some more academic resources to kind of learn how government functions and the sort. I think those are a little bit less applicable, especially when you're not maybe as engaged. While you might not be interested in politics itself, because I think politics sometimes gets a bad rep. We all have issues that we care a lot about, and politics is often the best way to push those forward. So I would just say like, to kind of figure out the way that that applies to certain levels of government and see how you might be able to like, needle in and push for that change. And that's something that I'm very happy to be of service on. If there's something that you want to push for specifically and you want to, hit me up over email or, Twitter or LinkedIn, I'm happy to give advice on that kind of stuff anytime. Oh, how would you recommend young adults to vote in the upcoming election if they're hesitant? Oh, sorry. So you're not asking me who to vote for. You're just kind of asking me how to encourage voting. I'm not exact. Okay, perfect. How to encourage voting. Yeah, I think young people voting has always been a real issue in Canada. It's always we've always been the lowest cohort of turnout in every election, practically ever. And so I think that a lot of people are asking that same question of how do you get young people to turn out and vote. I think that what we saw, what I don't know who's on TikTok, but I know that on TikTok, Jagmeet Singh has been a real presence there for the last year or so. And it's kind of showed, whatever you might think of as in politics, that actually meaningfully engaging with young people on the places where they are, just like as I said, politics is about who shows up, to be where they are and speak to them in their own medium and be authentic. Those are the things that people of all ages value. And I think sometimes young people kind of feel a little bit taken advantage of in many ways. And so I would just say, kind of meeting people where they are. A lot of young people are not the most engaged in politics because maybe they don't. I think a big part of that is sometimes getting involved in politics and interest in politics kind of relates to knowing what the material impacts of political decisions are to you, whether that be taxes or spending, or what all of those mean to your actual pocketbook. I would say with students, like it's kind of just really talking to them about the issues that are in the election that actually do impact them and how that would change theirs and their families experience in Canada and Ontario. That's kind of the way that I try to deal with it the most. I remember during the last provincial election was actually a really interesting one, because I had a few friends who just were not interested in voting at all, and we had just recently had become eligible to vote. And I remember talking to them, and they couldn't understand why it mattered to them, since they hardly paid tax. They weren't really they didn't really care too much about some of the other big promises. I was like, look, we're all in university right now. All of these, whoever wins this election is going to really determine what our funding levels are, whether we're getting more OSAP, whether we're getting less, which programs at our universities are going to be better funded and the sort. Those were ballot items in the last provincial election. And so it was actually that conversation that they decided to turn around and vote. And so I think it's just kind of talking to them about that, meeting them where they are, and sharing why that our election actually matters to them, instead of just demanding that they care because politics is important. That doesn't really get you much. Any advice to students on how to present themselves to politicians in order to be taken seriously and not dismissed? Yeah, that's a tough one. I think a lot of that just depends on whether the politician is, a respectful person. There's definitely a lot of politicians who, they're not very respectful to people who might go against their viewpoint. I think the big thing is to try to meet face to face with people. It's always a good thing to encourage that, because it kind of gets your foot in the door, and to really show that that you have people behind you supporting you, and that could be other students, that could be teachers, that could be parents. That's a good way to show that, like, yeah, it's not just maybe this politician is very self-serving and only thinking in the way of, well, they can't vote for me or they won't vote for me, so why should I care? And to have some backup of people being like, yeah, you know what, these students are right, to push for what they're pushing for, and we're adults that also believe that, is sometimes a valuable thing. So I know we've met before with student groups who come with teachers, and to be honest, I don't think I would not work for somebody who would be so dismissive of that, but I think it sometimes makes students a lot more comfortable as well to kind of talk about their viewpoints. So I would give that option as well, as a choice if you might feel uncomfortable with doing that. Any other questions? We could do some audio ones if people want. Do I have any tips on delivering an effective deputation? Yeah, there's actually like quite a bit of material online about doing deputations, and Progress Toronto, which is one of Toronto's like big progressive organizations, does training seminars on effective deputations. So I would recommend those. On my end, I think in terms of effective deputation, I would say, just making sure that you come prepared for the materials, reading all of the materials if you want to come and depute on a certain issue. For context, deputation is what we refer to at City Council when you come and to one of our committees depute, which is come and speak on a certain item that might be at committee. So maybe one council meeting where, I think the most common deputations are at community council meetings, we talk about development applications. And so oftentimes people will come and depute on it and say how much they dislike it, less frequently how much they like it. And one of the things that makes their deputation less effective is when they've read less of the materials and they've kind of familiarized themselves less with what the issue is. Maybe they just read a certain thing, maybe they read a Facebook post or something like that, and then they came out and just decided to yell at their politicians because they're mad. That is not an effective deputation because the people on the other end of that are saying this person doesn't know what they're talking about. So to be effective, I would just say to know your stuff before you show up. Be ready for any questions that might be asked. Kind of think about what some of those questions might be, and take your time. You have if you ever do a deputation, you have a good couple minutes to get your point across, and it's valuable to just take your time and pace yourself out, because otherwise you get a little too mumbly with them, and then that makes it less effective. All right, I think that's everyone because no one raised their hands while I was speaking. So last call for questions. All right, I'll wrap it up then. I put the contact info up, so please feel free to reach out to me anytime. Just like I said, if you have any questions about what kind of strategy you should go with if you wanted to get in touch with politicians or anything, that's something I'm really, really happy to give advice on if you ever want to get in touch. You got my email and my Twitter and LinkedIn, and so any one of those is a great place to start. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you, Mustafa, for your really insightful presentation. And yeah, feel free to reach out to him if you want to stay in touch. And next, now we're going to hear from Urban Minds' very own Jennifer Q. Jennifer is a program coordinator with Urban Minds and has made events like Leaders Lab possible. She will be providing a detailed school chapter orientation to help everyone get started. Over to you, Jennifer.
Okay, thank you so much, Lucy, and thank you again to all of the wonderful speakers for today. As Lucy mentioned, I'll be touching a little bit more about what the One Up Youth City Builders program is really about and how you guys can get started with your own school chapter for this upcoming school year. So the first part of our One Up Youth City Builders program is Leaders Lab, which is what you guys have been attending these past few days. Leaders Lab is a great opportunity to equip students with key skills needed to start your own school chapter, whether it is through hearing about from existing school chapters how to market and learning about other key professional skills like public speaking and design thinking. And lastly, today we also got to hear about the importance of volunteerism and youth advocacy. And with all of these knowledge, you guys are now ready to run your own school chapter. Okay, so what exactly are One Up school chapters? They are led by what we call One Up Fellows, which are what you guys are now, and with support from the Director of Engagement on the One Up executive team, as well as myself. We will help you with running activities throughout your school year, with the majority of them occurring between September to March. Okay, and here are some of the past existing school chapters. So you might already be from one of the schools on this list here. If that's the case, we're super excited that you're going to be continuing with us. And if you don't see your name here, that's also great too, because you're excited to continue expanding the number of school chapters we have. Okay, so as a One Up Fellow, we will work with you again to set up your school chapter to learn and elevate the voices of youth within the city building community. Now let's go into some more detail on exactly how you can start your own school chapter. One Up school chapters are not your typical school club. These chapters aim to empower students to create change in their cities. With our One Up School chapters, we aim to help equip youth with the resources needed to create change in their cities through our annual One Up Design competition. And our vision is a future where youth become an important force of change in city building. All right, as a One Up Fellow, these are some of the tools that you will need to help you successfully run your chapter. They include our starter kit and activity sheets, an introductory package, support from both the One Up side from our Director of Engagement, Emily, as well as from the Urban Mind side. And we'll be doing a lot of our communication this year via Discord. Okay, so to get you started, we'll be looking at our One Up starter kit, starting with this video here. Just as a heads up, the school chapter model has been adjusted this year due to the pandemic, so some of the starter kit elements you receive in the box, such as the roadmap and the handbook, which we'll take a look at later on, will be slightly different. I'll explain a little more after we check out this video. Okay, so now let's take a closer look at what you will be actually getting within the box. Okay, so here is what the One Up starter kit looks like. And as mentioned previously before, while you will be receiving a physical copy of both the One Up handbook and the roadmap, please be aware that they have been adjusted this year due to the pandemic. You can find all of the new updated versions on our One Up website under our Launchpad, which we'll look a little bit closer at. You guys can also see all the other materials from the video. So sticky notes for writing down your ideas, stickers to help you mark your progress and keep track, as well as promo cards that you can hand out to people in your school to join the club. Okay, so here's an example of one of the method cards that you saw in the video here on the left, as well as a corresponding activity sheet for it. So these method cards are a great way to help you complete your activity sheets, as they provide useful prompts to help you through the design thinking process. For example, one of the first activity sheets here asks your chapter to go on a visit to a site, and it will make references on how to use your method cards. This method card here is asking how are people using the space and if there are any outdoor spaces in the nearby area. Next, here is a general timeline of what the school year may look like for you and your school chapter. There will be activity sheets for you guys to complete from September until the end of December or so to the beginning of January. And while completing those activity sheets, we will also be hosting OneUp Connect webinars for you guys to hear from experts in the field throughout the months of October and November in preparation for the OneUp Design Competition. In the new year, from January to March, we'll be hosting our OneUp Design Competition. And this year's theme, which we'll touch on a little bit later, focuses around community food systems. And finally, we will have our OneUp conference held in March 2022. If at any point you and your chapter fall a little behind schedule or you hope to modify your schedule a little bit, please feel free to reach out to our Director of Engagement, Emily, to help discuss these changes and make sure you're staying on track. Moving on, let's look at some of the contents of the activity sheets. Activity sheets are engaging worksheets that foster collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking skills for you and your team, while also allowing students to learn more about city building and the design thinking process. The first 4 activity sheets will revolve around the first 2 stages of the design thinking process, empathize and define, and these will take place throughout the first 2.5 months or so, from September until mid-November. All right, so the main purpose of these first few activity sheets is for you to first gather your team, which will comprise of people within your school, choosing a site that you would like to learn more about, which revolves around this year's theme for the design competition, community food systems, and also learning about who uses the space, who's not using the space, and finding a challenge that you want to tackle within your site. All right, so during the first activity sheet, you'll learn more about your chapter members through icebreakers and introduce them to what the OneUp Youth City Builders program is about. And afterwards, you will get to choose a site. Here's an example from a site chosen by a previous school chapter at Earl Hague Secondary School. They chose an unofficial crosswalk by their school that was raising safety concerns, as many pedestrians were jaywalking across it, as seen over here. So we encourage you to choose a site that you and your chapter members either feel a strong connection with or are interested in learning more about. This is what activity sheet number 2 will focus on. At this stage, it's also important to recognize who is using the space and who isn't using the space. Are there barriers preventing the space from being accessible to all? What do people do at the site? What would their ideal experiences look like? This is what activity sheet number 3 will look at. All right, and now for the next few activity sheets, you will be looking at the next 2 stages of the design thinking process, idea and prototype, and this will take place from around mid-November until the end of December, start of January. Okay, so with activity sheet number 4, you and your team will first brainstorm and then decide upon a key challenge that you want to focus on. Using how might we questions is a great way to get the gears turning and help students brainstorm possible solutions and ideas to a challenge that you're facing. Referring back to the crosswalk site, here's the how might we question that the OneUp School chapter came up with. It's important that you keep in mind what challenges should be tackled in order to provide the best possible experience for the site's users. Activity sheet number 5 provides an opportunity for chapter members to brainstorm possible solutions to the challenge you previously came up with. The ideas do not have to be extremely realistic. The point is that students can write down whatever comes to mind, no matter how big or how small. Whether it's something that should be added to the site or taken away, a service that can be offered to the site users, etc. After brainstorming, students will then pick their favorite idea and help bring that to life through the next 2 activity sheets. There should be 3 to 4 people per idea in a group. The idea chosen by the OneUp School chapter that we've been looking at with their crosswalk is to set up a pop-up crosswalk at that location to make it more safe for users. As previously mentioned, this year's programming is a little bit different and has been modified due to the pandemic, but we thought it would be a great idea to still show you the outcome of this school chapter's ideas. Adding a mid-block crosswalk will allow the site to go from this to this. Although the students weren't permitted to realize our pop-up crosswalk, we were super excited to hear that the council authorized the installation of pedestrian traffic control signals at the location of the unofficial crosswalk. This is proof that youth have a strong voice in city building and are capable as co-creators. New for this year, activity sheet number 6 will look at what concept plans are and how you and your team members can visually represent your ideas and solutions through concept plans. And lastly, for activity sheet number 7, students will learn how to effectively pitch their ideas and concept plans to other members of your chapter. We also encourage you to invite friends from outside of the chapter to join in, provide feedback. While the activity sheets are being completed, students will also get the chance to take part in OneUp Connect webinars. OneUp Connect webinars allow students to hear from industry professionals working in the field and hear more about various urban planning and design aspects. This is a great way to learn from experts, get any questions you have answered, and discuss with other members of the OneUp community, including other school chapters. Last year, our OneUp Connect webinars were held via Instagram Live, and we covered a variety of topics, including exploring post-secondary options within the urban planning and design field and learning more about inclusion and community building. However, look forward to this year's webinars. We're switching up the topics of the presentations to better prepare students for the design competition. Next up, we'll be talking more about the OneUp Design Competition, which will take place from January to March. This past programming year, we hosted our very first OneUp Design competition with the theme of outdoor learning. In partnership with the Friends of Wychwood Barnes Park, we created a challenge for youth to participate in to come up with concept plans, ideas, solutions, and designs for Wychwood Barnes Park site located in Toronto. The participants pitched their ideas through concept plans, as seen like this one over here, and the winning team not only won a cash prize of $500 plus design TO memberships, but also presented at the conference in March. We are excited to announce that the theme for the 2022 OneUp Design competition is Food for All, Food Equity, and Community Empowerment. Think about urban agriculture and community gardens. We will be partnering with a local organization that will provide a real site for participants to come up with for design ideas for. Some of these ideas may be implemented in summer 2022. The design competition will challenge you to think about the important role that sustainable food systems have in the community and how they can enhance the experience of people who use them. In short, a food system comprises of the people, processes, and places involved in moving food from the seed the farmer plants to the food that ends up on your dinner table that you eat. This includes the growing, processing, and distributing components. So here's an example of one possible site that you and your school chapter may choose. Say, as a Ryerson student like myself, a nearby site that I might consider looking at is the Ryerson Urban Farm, which is a rooftop farm that is also a community food system. To help you prepare for the competition, your school chapter will be choosing a site in your neighborhood related to this theme for activity sheets 1 and 2. All right. Following the design competition will be our OneUp Toronto conference happening in March. This conference brings together high school students and city building professionals from all across the GTA. Last year in 2020, we had over 60 students across 24 schools and 9 municipalities come together at this conference. As mentioned, from the OneUp Design competition also presented their concept plan. School chapters will also get the opportunity to showcase their work. Here, the school did short videos to highlight their accomplishments, and in 2020, as seen in this photo here, we held a OneUp School Chapters Fair where each chapter had their own trifold board display. Toronto conference, we will also be hosting a special year-end social for all school chapter members to come together and celebrate the amazing year and everyone's hard work. Stay tuned for more information on this. All the resources as mentioned needed for your school chapter, including the activity sheets and your starter kit components, can be found over here on the oneuptoronto.org website. Under chapters, click on Launchpad. You can then click on any of the icons to bring you to the corresponding activity sheet or starter kit components. And following today's session, you will also be sent the OneUp introductory package. In this package, you will find a letter that you can send to your school principal asking for approval to start your school chapter, the slideshow that you can present at your very first meeting for all of the general members, and a suggested icebreaker for your first meeting as well. Here is a brief look at what the letter to your principal will look like. You will be responsible for changing anything highlighted in yellow to better reflect what your school principal name and school address will be. All right. As mentioned, Emily and myself will be supporting you every step of the way. Please take note of our email addresses here in case you're unable to contact us via Discord. Before we move on, I wanted to stop for just a brief second to see if anyone had any questions. Okay, we will continue on from here. If you have any questions while I'm talking, please also feel free to drop them in the chat box and I'll return to them shortly after. All right, now we will be moving on specifically to the roles and responsibilities that you as a fellow have, as well as what Emily and myself will be doing throughout the school year. Emily will be acting as your main person of contact. Again, please contact her through Discord if possible, and then she will relay any information to myself. If you're unable again to reach us via Discord, please take note of our email addresses here as well. And for you guys, as a OneUp fellow, you are responsible for running your school chapter, including hosting and planning the meetings, meeting with Urban Minds and the OneUp team 4 times throughout the year. We set it as the first week in October, December, and February and April, just to make sure that you guys are on track and that we're providing any support that may be needed. And you will also be responsible for sending Emily any bi-weekly updates via Discord. We've set up a specific channel that you guys will have access to afterwards. That'll be your school name -updates, where you can update Emily on what's been going on throughout the past 2 weeks. On the OneUp side, Emily will be responsible for providing support to you guys running your chapters, and she'll be also sending out reminders via Discord through the announcement channels. This could be of any registration deadlines or any important notices. And she's also going to be helping you guys out by answering any questions or concerns you have, again, via Discord or through email. And on the Urban Mind side, I'll be working closely with Emily to provide additional support and make sure that everything is running smoothly. And lastly, we're going to run through some policies that all fellows will be expected to follow. As mentioned before, you guys are expected to send bi-weekly check-ins to Emily, who again is our Director of Engagement. Please send this via Discord through it'll be your school name -updates, and preferably every other Monday. And these check-ins are really just to make sure that you guys are on the right track with your activity sheets, ensuring that Emily or myself can provide additional support or answer any questions that you have. Here is a mock bi-weekly update that I made pretending as if I am the York Mills fellow. So here is our channel name here, York Mills -updates, and it is a locked channel. So it would only be seen by whoever is within this channel, Emily, and then the OneUp fellow for that school. And this is the updates that I've sent to Emily. So I let her know about the progress about our activity sheets, how our Instagram page and other social medias are going, any support I may need, and in general, how the members of the school chapter are feeling. All right. We will also be sending out a separate document outlining more of the email etiquette guidelines, but here are some key points that you guys can remember for now. Please try to aim to reply within 24 hours to any emails and follow up 48 hours after sending an email. If you haven't received a response to a follow-up email after another 48 hours, please reach out to Emily. For all emails where you have multiple recipients and you're talking about the same topic, please use the reply to all function so that everyone will be receiving those emails. For example, if I'm emailing a teacher, supervisor, and principal about finding a classroom to host meetings, I'll be sure to click reply to all for any emails relating to this conversation. In your subject line, please also include your school name. So we'll have OneUp, for example, OneUp York Mills chapter. And just as if you're writing an assignment for school, please be sure to look over your grammar and spelling and double check before sending. Please be sure to start all of your emails by greeting the recipient and end off with your signature, which we will help you set up. It should look like this. So you'll have your name, your role, as well as the OneUp Toronto website and social medias here. If you have any trouble setting this up, please contact Emily. All right, and for all of the activity sheets, you will be expected to upload documents and pictures to Google Drive, Instagram, and Discord. To keep things consistent, please use this name for all of your files. So it'll be your school name _ the title of whatever the sheet is. Here is an example, again, as if I'm from York Mills. I'll have my own Google Drive folder here for OneUp School chapter submissions. And if I'm looking at activity sheet number 1, I'll be submitting 3 files here. So we have York Mills _ meeting minutes, York Mills _ school chapter members, and then the York Mills team photo. As well, you can please also have an Instagram post ready for all of your activity sheets More instructions will be provided at the back of all of your activity sheets in terms of what photos you should be posting and what you should be writing in your caption. Again, please look over your grammar and spelling to make sure that everything looks good before posting, and also tag One Toronto so we know when you posted and we can give your photo a like. All right, and we also ask that you share your Instagram photo and caption to this channel on Discord called Activity Sheet Submission so that all the other school chapters can see what everyone else has been working on. Okay, now that you're an expert on what the One Up Youth City Builders program is about and all of your roles and responsibilities, here are some next steps to get you started. After this session, we'll be sharing the starter kit and activity sheets with you through a Google Drive folder, as well as the introductory package with everything that you'll need, including the letter to send to your principal. Please be sure to keep a lookout on your email inbox in the next few days for this Google Drive folder. To start, look through the first few activity sheets, especially activity sheets 1 and 2, and the introductory package to get an idea of what the next few weeks will look like for you. Please also join our Discord channel, as this is where a lot of our communication will be happening. I put a link here for you guys, and we'll also be sending it in both the chat as well as in an email message following Leaders Lab session today. Please have this link handy, as we will also encourage you to ask the members from your school chapter to join it as well. And we'll also be setting up a separate channel just for One Up Fellows, so that you guys can discuss any questions you have, share any advice or tips with each other as well. If you're new to Discord, please don't worry. We'll be uploading a short tutorial to show you guys all of the basics you'll need to know to get through the school year successfully in the upcoming days. So look out for that as well. And again, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to Emily. Once you get approval from your principal to start your One Up School chapter, you'll need to find a teacher supervisor, determine a time and place for your meetings, and promote your school chapter, whether it be through morning announcements, hanging up posters around your school, or through social media. At your first meeting, you can start building your team. Be sure to take note of everyone's names, their contact information, and their preferred position they would like. Please refer to the end of activity sheet number 1 for more information on this. All right. And within the first two activity sheets, there will be a brainstorming session for you guys to list as many community food system sites within your neighborhood as possible. And you will eventually narrow down and choose just one of these sites to focus on for the rest of your activity sheets here. So please be prepared to start contacting the organizers or the owners of these sites either through email or phone call to set up a site visit or have someone from that site come in to speak at your school. We'll be here to provide more support, and please feel free to reach out with any questions you have about this as you start preparing to do so. Right. Most importantly, before you can officially become a One Up Fellow, you'll need to read, sign, and send back these following forms, which we'll send to your email after today's session. Once you share these forms with us, we'll send over the Google Drive folder with the introductory package as well as the activity sheets for you. Please fill out these forms and send them back to us by latest Friday, August 27th, so that we can get your starter kit shipped out to you. Once again, for any questions you have, please reach out to Emily via Discord or email. And now we will be spending some time answering any questions you may have. Please feel free to unmute yourselves or type them in the chat box. All right, so we have a question here from Arij, and this might be a question that a few of you guys have also been having in terms of whether there's a minimum amount of members required to start a school chapter. So preferably for all school chapters, you would like at least a minimum of 4 members to cover all of the executive positions. So that would include yourself as the One Up Fellow, having a vice president, someone to be in charge of marketing on social media, as well as someone to help with secretary and taking meeting minutes. So preferably 4 members, but these are people that can gather at your first meeting. So you don't need to have them ready all at the start. Yeah, so if we need to revisit all the information you just shared, where can we find it? So as mentioned, after today's session, we'll be sending out an email with all of the forms that we need you guys to fill out and send back to us. And after that's done, we'll be sharing a Google Drive folder with a lot of the information you can find from today's session, including a handbook that kind of covers all of the basics about the One Up Youth City Builder program, as well as the introductory package with a lot of other information as well.
Okay, I'm assuming that's all the questions since there's no more in the chat, but feel free to message Jennifer or Emily if you have any other questions about starting your own One Up school chapter. Now, before we end today, we'd really appreciate it if everyone who has attended would fill out our feedback survey for Leaders Lab this year. This allows us to improve our events for future years. And you have the chance to win a $10 Dollarama gift card, so filling out the survey is highly encouraged. The link for the survey will be posted in the chat right now. So please take the next 2 minutes to fill out the survey. Okay, so hopefully you finished filling the survey by now, and that officially wraps up Leaders Lab. Thank you so much everyone for participating and spending the last 3 days with us. We enjoyed and learned a lot, and I hope you did too. Now we'll be taking our group photos, so kindly turn on your cameras for this.
Hey, Lucy, before we take the group photo, I just want to make sure the form works for everyone. I feel like the form is,
Oh
I
yeah,
don't
I
know,
think
on my end, it's not working.
yeah, and it said please email someone.
Okay, can we make sure the form works before we take the group photo? Yeah, sorry about that. Technical difficulty.
I'll pull up the form again and I'll paste another link in the chat. Okay, I am pasting that now.
I think it's this, it should be this link. I think you sent the edit link, Irene. Here it is.
Oh, thank you.
Lucy, do you mind putting on the music back for a couple minutes?
Yeah.
Thank you. And sorry about that, everyone.
Okay, so we'll give everyone another like 2 minutes. Okay, I think that was around 2 minutes, so hopefully he's now done filling out the form, and yeah, now we can take our group photo. Sorry for the inconvenience.
Okay, I'll wait for those few that would like to get their video on. I'll give everyone 20 more seconds. Okay. This may be the last few stragglers. All right, I think we have a pretty good group, so I'm gonna do a countdown and take our photo, okay? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all who turned on their camera. And to reiterate, this virtual event wouldn't have been possible with the help of all our current executives, volunteers, speakers, and sponsors. So a huge shout out to them. And stay connected with us by following our Instagram pages at OneUpToronto or by visiting our website, oneuptoronto.org and Discord server. And Emily will drop them in the chat right now. And with their permission, we'll also make sure to share any presentation materials that our speakers shared with us for your reference. If you have any questions regarding setting up a school chapter in the new school year, please do not hesitate to contact Emily, our OneUp Director of Engagement at emilyshu@urbanminds.co, or more general inquiries at hello@urbanminds.co. And Emily's going to paste those emails in the chat as well. And yeah, thank you so much for coming out to OneUp Leaders Lab 2021, and have a great day.